The courtroom doors swung open, and I walked in holding a plain manila envelope against my chest like a shield. My husband Chikwudi sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, that smug smile plastered across his face, the same smile I'd seen when I caught him in our bed with my sister 3 months ago. He thought he'd already won. He thought the forged documents his lawyer was about to present would convince Judge Okonkwo that my late father's $600 million real estate empire belonged to him as marital property. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. I took my seat, my hands trembling slightly as I placed the envelope on the table. My lawyer, Mrs. Adebayo, squeezed my shoulder. She knew what was inside. Chikwudi didn't. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Okonkwo entered, his black robes flowing, his expression unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. This was it. 10 years of marriage, 2 children, countless sacrifices, all leading to this moment in a Lagos High Court on a humid Tuesday morning. Let me take you back to where it all started falling apart. My name is Amara Okafor, though the business world knew me as the heiress who turned her father's struggling property development company into a billion-naira empire spanning Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. I'd met Chikwudi Nwosu at a charity gala in Victoria Island 7 years ago. He was charming, educated, working as a mid-level manager at a telecommunications company. He said he loved me for who I was, not what I had. I believed him. We married within a year. A lavish ceremony at Eco Hotel, over 800 guests, traditional attire that cost more than most people's cars. My father, Chief Okafor, walked me down the aisle 3 months before his sudden death. In his will, he left everything to me, the properties, the businesses, the offshore accounts. Chikwudi seemed supportive. He quit his job to help manage my empire, though mostly he attended gym sessions and played golf with his friends. I gave him everything a wife could give. 2 beautiful children, Chisholm, now 6, and Dubam, 4 years old. A mansion in Banana Island worth 400 million naira. Credit cards with no limits. Respect in our community. I stood beside him at every family function, smiled through his mother's complaints that I worked too much, defended him when my business partners questioned why my husband's name was suddenly appearing on company documents. Then came that Thursday evening, 3 months ago. I'd been in Abuja for a property acquisition meeting, scheduled to return Friday. But the deal collapsed early, and I caught a late afternoon flight back to Lagos. I didn't tell Chikwudi. I wanted to surprise him, maybe have a quiet dinner together, remind ourselves why we fell in love. I used my key to enter our home around 8 p.m. The house was dim except for lights upstairs. I heard sounds. Laughter. My sister Ngozi's laughter, specifically, that high-pitched giggle she'd had since childhood. My feet moved on their own, climbing those marble stairs my father's money had paid for. Our bedroom door was half open. The scene inside burned itself into my brain with such clarity that even now, months later, I could close my eyes and see every detail. Chikwudi and Ngozi. In my bed. On my Egyptian cotton sheets. Wearing nothing but betrayal and sweat. They didn't see me at first. I stood frozen, my handbag slipping from my shoulder and hitting the floor with a thud that made them both jump. Amara. Chikwudi scrambled for the sheets. This isn't. Get out, I said quietly. Too quietly. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Both of you. Get out of my house. Ngozi started crying immediately, her trademark manipulation tactic. Sister, please, I can explain. Now. The word exploded from somewhere deep in my chest. That night, I learned who I really was. Not Chikwudi's wife. Not Ngozi's forgiving older sister. I was Chief Okafor's daughter, and I had steel in my spine I'd forgotten existed. Now, back in this courtroom, Judge Okonkwo settled into his chair and peered at the assembled parties. This is case number HC/2025/0847. Nwosu versus Okafor, he began. Mr. Nwosu is petitioning for division of marital assets following the dissolution of his marriage to Mrs. Okafor. Counsel, your opening statements. Chikwudi's lawyer stood, a slick man named Barrister Okoro with an expensive suit and a reputation for winning ugly cases. What happened next would determine everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think is in that envelope? Comment below. Barrister Okoro smoothed his tie and addressed the court with practiced confidence. Your Honor, my client Mr. Chikwudi Nwosu entered his marriage in good faith. For 7 years, he served not just as a husband but as a business partner, contributing his expertise and time to build the Okafor empire that exists today. Nigerian matrimonial law is clear: assets acquired during marriage are joint property. I felt my jaw clench. Contributed his expertise? The man spent most days at the country club. Furthermore, Okoro continued, pulling documents from his briefcase, Mr. Nwosu has evidence that he was actively involved in major business decisions. These signed contracts show his position as co-director of Okafor Properties Limited. Mrs. Adebayo, my lawyer, made a note but remained calm. She'd warned me this was coming. Judge Okonkwo examined the documents Okoro presented. My heart hammered against my ribs. Those signatures looked real. But I knew they weren't. Mrs. Adebayo, your response? The judge prompted. My lawyer stood gracefully, her gray suit impeccable, her voice steady. Your Honor, with respect, those documents are fraudulent. Mrs. Okafor never appointed her husband as co-director. The signatures are forged, and we have evidence to prove it. Chikwudi's smug expression flickered. Just slightly, but I caught it. Bold accusation, counsel, Judge Okonkwo said. I trust you can substantiate it? Yes, Your Honor. At the appropriate time. The hearing continued for another hour. Barrister Okoro painted a picture of devoted husband betrayed by a cold, ambitious wife. He claimed I'd frozen Chikwudi out of financial decisions after my father's death, despite his integral role in the business. He presented bank statements showing modest deposits into Chikwudi's account, money I'd given him freely as my husband, and argued this proved his financial contributions were undervalued. It was a masterclass in manipulation, and I could see it working on some of the courtroom observers. During the break, I stepped outside into the corridor. The Lagos heat hit me immediately, even with the court's air conditioning. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. How is it going? Please don't let that man take your father's legacy. Chief Okafor is watching from above. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. Not here. Not now. Mrs. Okafor? I turned to find a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, professional attire, nervous energy. Yes. My name is Ifeoma Daniels. I worked, at your husband's club. Can we talk? Something in her urgency made me nod. We moved to a quieter corner. I saw the court listing in the newspaper, Ifeoma said quickly, glancing around. I need to tell you something. Your husband and that lawyer, Barrister Okoro, they've been friends for years. They went to university together. I've served them drinks dozens of times while they planned things. My pulse quickened. What kind of things? I don't know specifics, Ma. But 3 months ago, around the time your marriage ended, they had a loud argument at the club. Your husband was drunk. He kept saying, once we get the papers signed, it's done. She'll never know the difference. Barrister Okoro told him to keep quiet. The pieces clicked into place. The forged documents hadn't been a desperate last-minute move. They'd been planning this for months, probably longer. While I was building businesses, attending meetings, caring for our children, Chikwudi had been systematically positioning himself to steal everything. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Ifeoma's eyes hardened. Because 2 years ago, I watched my sister lose everything to a man just like yours. And because I heard Barrister Okoro say something else that day. What? He said, women like Amara Okafor think they're untouchable. She has no idea what's coming. Rage flared in my chest, white-hot and clarifying. Can you testify to this? I asked. She hesitated. That lawyer is powerful, Ma. He could make my life very difficult. I understood. Power protected power in Lagos. Speaking truth against men like Okoro and Chukwudi carried risks for ordinary people like Ifeoma. Think about it, I said, pressing my business card into her hand. If you decide you can, call my lawyer directly. We'll protect you. As Ifeoma hurried away, Mrs. Adebayo appeared at my elbow. Court's resuming. Are you ready? I thought about the envelope waiting in the courtroom. About everything I'd discovered in the past 3 months. About the detective I'd hired, the trails I'd followed, the truth I'd uncovered. Yes, I said. I'm ready. We returned to find Chukwudi whispering intensely with Barrister Okoro. When they saw me, they stopped abruptly. Chukwudi's expression shifted to something uglier, contempt mixed with greed. How had I ever loved this man? How had I shared my bed, my life, my dreams with someone capable of such calculated betrayal? Judge Okonkwo resumed his seat. We'll now hear from Mrs. Okafor's counsel regarding the authenticity of the documents presented. Mrs. Adebayo stood, and I felt the weight of the moment settle over the courtroom. Your Honor, before we proceed, there's another matter the court should be aware of. One that directly impacts Mr. Nwosu's credibility and his claim to any portion of the Okafor fortune. Chukwudi's lawyer jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. Whatever counsel is about to present wasn't disclosed in discovery. Actually, Mrs. Adebayo interrupted smoothly, it was. 3 days ago. Barrister Okoro simply chose not to read it. Judge Okonkwo frowned. Is this true, Barrister Okoro? For the first time, I saw uncertainty cross Okoro's face. He shuffled papers frantically. Mrs. Adebayo continued. Your Honor, Mrs. Okafor has evidence that her husband's betrayal extends far beyond infidelity. She has proof of systematic financial fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to steal corporate assets. And it all started long before their marriage ended. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Okonkwo's gavel cracked sharply. Order. Mrs. Adebayo, present your evidence. This was it. I reached for the envelope, my hands steadier now than they'd been all morning. But before I could open it, the courtroom doors burst open. A man I'd never seen before stumbled in, breathing hard, clutching a phone. Your Honor, I'm sorry for the interruption, but there's been an incident. It's about this case. Don't forget to like and share if you're hooked on this story. What do you think just happened? Drop your theories in the comments. Judge Okonkwo's face darkened with irritation. Who are you, and what gives you the right to interrupt these proceedings? The man, mid-30s, sweating through his shirt despite the air conditioning, approached the bench cautiously. My name is Emeka Obi, Your Honor. I'm a senior accountant at First Bank of Nigeria, Victoria Island branch. I came because... He glanced at me, then at Chukwudi. Because I just discovered a transaction that this court needs to know about immediately. Barrister Okoro shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. This man has no standing in this case. Sit down, Barrister, Judge Okonkwo commanded. To Emeka, explain yourself. Quickly. Emeka held up his phone, hands shaking slightly. 20 minutes ago, there was an attempted wire transfer from Okafor Properties' main operating account. Someone tried to move 50 million naira to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The courtroom exploded. My heart stopped. Mrs. Adebayo grabbed my arm. That's impossible, I said. I'm the only signatory on that account. I have all the passwords. The authorization codes used were yours, Mrs. Okafor, Emeka interrupted. But our fraud detection system flagged it because the IP address originated from inside this courthouse. Specifically, from a laptop in this building about 15 minutes ago. Every head in the courtroom turned toward Chukwudi. His face had gone pale. This is ridiculous, he shouted, standing up. I don't even have access to those accounts anymore. She cut me off completely after. After you were caught in bed with her sister, Judge Okonkwo finished dryly. He turned to Emeka. Can you trace which device initiated this transfer? Yes, Your Honor. Our security team is working on it now. But I thought it was crucial to inform the court immediately since both parties in this case are present and it involves assets currently under litigation. Mrs. Adebayo spoke up quickly. Your Honor, I'd like to request an immediate examination of all electronic devices in this courtroom. If someone here attempted this fraud, we need to identify them before evidence can be destroyed. Barrister Okoro was sweating now too. Your Honor, this is a clear attempt by Mrs. Okafor to derail legitimate proceedings. For all we know, she staged this herself to discredit my client. Then you should have no objection to proving your innocence, Mrs. Adebayo countered smoothly. Judge Okonkwo considered this for a long moment. Mr. Obi, do you have authorization from your bank to share this information in a legal proceeding? Yes, Your Honor. My manager is aware and approved my coming here. Given the amounts involved and the ongoing litigation, we felt it was necessary. I can have official documentation sent within the hour. Very well. Judge Okonkwo's gaze swept the courtroom. I'm ordering an immediate recess. Court security will collect all electronic devices from both legal teams and their clients. Mr. Obi, your bank's IT department will work with court IT staff to trace the source of this attempted fraud. We reconvene in 2 hours. The gavel fell with finality. Chaos erupted. Chukwudi was shouting at his lawyer. Barrister Okoro was frantically making phone calls. Court security began moving through the room, collecting laptops, tablets, and phones. Mrs. Adebayo leaned close to me. Did you know about this? No, I whispered, genuinely shocked. I check that account every morning. There was nothing unusual at 7 a.m. Then someone very bold made a move during this hearing, she said grimly. Either your husband or someone working with him. I watched as security approached Chukwudi. He handed over his phone with visible reluctance, still protesting loudly about his rights being violated. Barrister Okoro surrendered a sleek laptop, his professional composure cracking at the edges. My own phone and laptop were collected without drama. I had nothing to hide. During the recess, I sat in a small consultation room with Mrs. Adebayo, my mind racing. 50 million naira. That was just a fraction of my total worth, but it was significant. Operational capital for ongoing projects, payroll for over 100 employees, commitments to contractors. He's getting desperate, Mrs. Adebayo said, reviewing notes. Men like your husband, when they realize they're losing control, they make mistakes. This could be the mistake that ends him. Or it could be something else, I said slowly. A thought was forming, uncomfortable and sharp. What if it wasn't Chukwudi? Mrs. Adebayo looked up sharply. Who else would it be? Think about it. He's not technically sophisticated. He barely knows how to use Excel. But his lawyer. I let the implication hang. Okoro. Mrs. Adebayo's eyes narrowed. They went to university together. That woman, Ifeoma, said they'd been planning this for months. And Okoro would have the legal knowledge to know exactly what could be frozen during litigation and what might slip through. If he could access my accounts using forged credentials, maybe he thought he could move assets while everyone was distracted by the court proceedings. That would be extraordinarily bold, Mrs. Adebayo said. And stupid. The transaction would be traced back eventually. Unless he planned to blame Chukwudi for it, I said. Think about it. Chukwudi is the obvious suspect. If the fraud is discovered, Okoro just claims his client acted without his knowledge. Meanwhile, the money's already offshore, potentially unrecoverable, and they split it later after the heat dies down. Mrs. Adebayo sat back, absorbing this. If you're right, we need to prove it before Okoro has time to cover his tracks. A knock at the door interrupted us. A court clerk entered. Mrs. Okafor? There's someone here asking to speak with you. She says it's urgent. Her name is Ngozi. My sister. The woman I'd caught in my bed with my husband. My first instinct was to refuse, but something made me pause. Send her in. Ngozi entered tentatively, looking nothing like the confident, beautiful woman who'd betrayed me. She'd lost weight, wore no makeup, and her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. She'd always been the pretty one, the charming one, the one who could get away with anything because of her smile. That smile was gone now. "Amara, please," she started. "I know you don't want to see me." "Then why are you here?" My voice was ice. "Because I need to tell you something about Chukwudi. Something I should have told you months ago." She glanced at Mrs. Adebayo. "Can we speak privately? Anything you say to me, you can say in front of my lawyer." Ngozi swallowed hard. Okay. The affair. It wasn't just an affair. Chukwudi planned it. He approached me 6 months before you caught us. The words hit like a physical blow. What? He came to me at that birthday party, remember? Cousin Adi's party in Lekki. You just signed that big deal for the Abuja Towers. He pulled me aside, said he needed my help with something. I thought he was planning a surprise for you. Her voice broke. But he wasn't. He said he needed to make you angry enough to file for divorce, but he couldn't be the one to do it. It had to look like you were the wronged party, so the court would be more sympathetic to him. My mind reeled. So you agreed to sleep with him? Your sister's husband. Tears streamed down Ngozi's face. He said it would be one time. Just enough to get caught. He said he'd pay off my debts. You know I had those credit card problems. And he promised. She couldn't continue. Promised what? Mrs. Adebayo asked sharply. That once he got his share of the money, we'd be together. He said he never really loved you, that the marriage was just for the money from the start. And I was stupid enough to believe him because I was jealous of you, Amara. I always have been. You're the successful one, the smart one, the one who made Daddy proud. Stop. I couldn't listen to any more. The betrayal had depths I hadn't imagined. Not just infidelity but calculated, premeditated destruction. Why are you telling me this now? I demanded. Ngozi looked up, her face streaked with mascara. Because yesterday, Chukwudi called me. He's been living with his mother since you threw him out. He told me that once he gets the money from this case, he's moving to South Africa with that lawyer's daughter. Some girl named Chidera who's been his girlfriend for over a year. There was never going to be an U.S. Amara. I was just a tool. He used me to hurt you, and I let him because I was weak and selfish and horrible. The room fell silent except for Ngozi's quiet sobbing. Mrs. Adebayo spoke first. Are you willing to testify to all of this in court? Under oath. Ngozi nodded. Yes. I've already destroyed our family. At least I can try to stop him from destroying everything else. We'll need a formal statement, Mrs. Adebayo said, already pulling out recording equipment. Everything you know about Chukwidi's plans, his relationship with Barrister Okoro, any conversations about the business or the money. As Ngozi began her statement, I walked to the window overlooking Lagos's chaotic streets below. The city sprawled endlessly, millions of people, each with their own struggles, their own betrayals. Mine wasn't special or unique. It was just mine to bear. My phone buzzed with a text from my children's nanny. Chisholm is asking when Daddy is coming home. What should I tell her? My heart cracked. In all of this, the money, the betrayal, the legal battles, I'd almost lost sight of what mattered most. 2 children who didn't understand why their family had exploded. Who loved their father despite what he'd done because they were too young to comprehend it. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Mrs. Okafor, this is Emeka from the bank. The trace is complete. You need to get back to court now. What we found, you're not going to believe it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. This story is about to get even wilder. What do you think they found? Comment your predictions below. When I returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere had changed completely. Court security officers stood at attention by the doors. Judge Okonkwo sat behind his bench with an expression I couldn't read, somewhere between shock and anger. Chukwudi and Barrister Okoro were seated separately now, not conferring, both looking pale. Emeka Obi stood near the judge's bench with 2 other people I assumed were bank officials and IT specialists. Mrs. Okafor, Judge Okonkwo said as I entered, Please be seated. We have significant developments. Mrs. Adebayo and I took our places. I felt Chikwudi's eyes on me but refused to look at him. Mr. Obi, the judge continued, please present your findings to the court. Emeka stepped forward, holding a tablet. Your Honor, our investigation into the attempted wire transfer revealed several disturbing facts. First, the authorization codes used were indeed Mrs. Okafor's legitimate credentials. However, they were accessed using keystroke logging malware that had been installed on her personal laptop approximately 4 months ago. My stomach dropped. 4 months ago. Right around the time Chikwudi had fixed my laptop when it was running slowly. Second, Emeka continued, the transfer was initiated from a laptop belonging to Barrister Clement Okoro. The IP address, MAC address, and browser fingerprint all match his device, which we confiscated during the recess. Barrister Okoro jumped to his feet. That's impossible. I've been sitting in this courtroom the entire time. I haven't touched my laptop since. He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. Since when, Barrister? Judge Okonkwo asked quietly. Dangerously. Since this morning, Your Honor. It's been in my briefcase. A briefcase you left unattended during the first recess, the judge noted. When you went outside to make phone calls. Your Honor, anyone could have accessed my laptop. This proves nothing. Actually, one of the IT specialists interrupted. It proves quite a bit. The laptop's activity logs show the transfer was initiated at 10:47 a.m. The device was actively being used at that time. Emails were being checked, documents were being accessed. This wasn't a case of someone briefly borrowing the laptop. Whoever initiated the transfer was working from this device for at least 15 minutes. At 10:47, Mrs. Adebayo interjected, Barrister Okoro requested a brief recess to review documents. He left the courtroom with his briefcase. I noted the time specifically. Judge Okonkwo's expression hardened. Barrister Okoro, do you have anything to say? Okoro's professional composure was completely gone. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Your Honor, there must be some mistake. Perhaps my laptop was hacked remotely. The bank's cybersecurity team already investigated that possibility, Emeka said. The commands were entered manually, using the laptop's keyboard. Not remotely. The implications crashed over the courtroom like a wave. A lawyer attempting to steal from his own client's wife during court proceedings. The audacity was staggering. Furthermore, Emeka added, when we examined the transaction details more closely, we discovered the Cayman Islands account belongs to a shell corporation. That corporation's beneficial owner is... He paused, checking his tablet. A company called Okoro and Associates Holdings, Limited. That's my firm's investment arm, Barrister Okoro said quickly. But I had nothing to do with... The account was opened 3 weeks ago, Emeka interrupted. Using documents bearing your signature, Barrister. Silence fell like a hammer. Judge Okonkwo removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly, and replaced them. When he spoke, his voice was deceptively calm. Barrister Clement Okoro, I am placing you under immediate contempt of court. Furthermore, I am ordering your detention pending criminal investigation for attempted fraud, theft, and criminal conspiracy. Court security, please take Barrister Okoro into custody. The courtroom erupted. Okoro began shouting about his rights, about false accusations, about persecution. Security officers moved quickly, efficiently, removing him from the courtroom despite his protests. Chikwudi sat frozen, his face ashen. When order was restored, Judge Okonkwo turned to him. Mr. Nwosu, your legal representation has been removed from this proceeding under criminal circumstances. You have the right to request a continuance to secure new counsel. However, given what we've just witnessed, I strongly advise you to consider your position carefully. Chikwudi's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Your Honor, Mrs. Adebayo said, standing smoothly, given these developments, and given that Mr. Nwosu's primary evidence consisted of documents we can now reasonably assume were forged by his attorney, I move for immediate dismissal of this case with prejudice. Furthermore, she continued, pulling out her own folder. My client wishes to file a countersuit against Mr. Nwosu for fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and emotional distress. We have substantial evidence to present. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Adebayo reached for the manila envelope I'd brought, the one that had sat on our table all morning like a promise. She opened it and removed a thick stack of documents. Your Honor, while Mr. Nwosu was planning to steal my client's fortune through legal manipulation, we were conducting our own investigation. These documents tell a very different story about this marriage. She began laying pages on a document projector, images appearing on the screen for everyone to see. First, we have bank records showing that over the past 3 years, Mr. Nwosu systematically transferred money from household accounts into private accounts in his name alone. Small amounts, carefully spaced to avoid detection. Total amount, approximately 23 million naira. Chukwudi's face went from pale to gray. Second, we have emails between Mr. Nwosu and various business contacts, including Barrister Okoro, discussing strategies to secure assets from the Okafor estate. These emails date back over 2 years, long before any marital problems surfaced. My hands clenched in my lap. 2 years. He'd been planning this for 2 years. Third, Mrs. Adebayo continued, her voice hardening, we have evidence that Mr. Nwosu entered this marriage under false pretenses. He misrepresented his financial status, his employment history, and his personal background. A new image appeared on screen, a marriage certificate. But not ours. Your Honor, this is a marriage certificate from Port Harcourt, dated 2011. 4 years before Mr. Nwosu married my client. The groom's name is Chukwudi Nwosu. The bride's name is Blessing Ease. This marriage was never legally dissolved. The courtroom exploded again. I heard gasps, shouts, the sound of people turning to their neighbors in shock. I stared at the screen, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. Chukwudi had been married before? Was possibly still married? That meant our marriage was... Your Honor, Mrs. Adebayo said over the noise, my client's marriage to Mr. Nwosu may be legally void due to bigamy. We have investigators currently attempting to locate Ms. Ease to confirm the status of that marriage. But regardless, this document proves that Mr. Nwosu entered his relationship with Mrs. Okafor fraudulently. Judge Okonkwo's expression had moved beyond anger into something colder and more judicial. Mr. Nwosu, stand up. Chukwudi stood on shaking legs. Do you have legal representation present? No, Your Honor. Do you wish to respond to these allegations? Chukwudi looked around the courtroom like a trapped animal. His eyes landed on me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear there. Real, genuine fear. He started, then stopped. I want to request a continuance. I need time to get a new lawyer, to review these documents. Denied, Judge Okonkwo said flatly. You've had months to prepare your case. Your choice of legal representation and his criminal activities are not this court's concern. I'm ruling on the motion before me. Mr. Nwosu's petition for division of marital assets is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, given the evidence of fraud, bigamy, and criminal conspiracy presented here today, I'm ordering Mr. Nwosu to appear before this court next week to show cause why he should not be held in contempt and referred for criminal prosecution. The gavel came down. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm issuing an immediate restraining order preventing Mr. Nwosu from contacting Mrs. Okafor except through legal counsel and regarding matters concerning their minor children. He is also prohibited from approaching any assets, accounts, or properties owned by Mrs. Okafor or her business entities. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. Another strike of the gavel. We're adjourned. I sat motionless as the courtroom emptied around me. Chukwudi was being escorted out by security, still protesting, still trying to explain. His voice faded down the corridor. Mrs. Adebayo sat beside me quietly, giving me space to process. Did you know? I finally asked. About the other marriage? We discovered it 2 weeks ago, she admitted. My investigator found it buried in Port Harcourt records. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I thought... I thought it would be more effective as a surprise in court. She was right, of course. The shock value had been devastating. But still. I wasn't married, I said slowly, letting the reality sink in. For 7 years, I thought I was married. I had children with a man who was already married to someone else. I'm not divorced. I'm not a wife. What was I? You're a survivor, Mrs. Adebayo said firmly. You're a woman who was systematically deceived by a con artist. None of this is your fault. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Okafor, my name is Blessing Ease. I heard about the court case. We need to talk. Your husband, your fake husband, he owes me answers too. I showed the message to Mrs. Adebayo. This day keeps getting more interesting, she murmured. Do you want to meet her? Did I? Meeting the woman Chukwudi had actually married felt surreal. But maybe she had answers I needed. Maybe we'd both been victims of the same man. Yes, I decided. Set it up. I want to know everything. As we gathered our things to leave, a court clerk approached with a message. Mrs. Okafor? There's a Detective Ibrahim outside. He's from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. He says he has questions about Barrister Okoro's activities and needs your statement. Of course. Okoro's attempted theft during court proceedings would trigger a major investigation. The EFCC didn't mess around with financial crimes at this level. Tell him I'll make time tomorrow, I said. Right now, I need to go home and see my children. But as we exited the courthouse into Lagos's humid afternoon air, I saw someone waiting by my car. A woman in her late 20s, wearing a simple dress, clutching a worn handbag. Her eyes met mine with an expression I recognized, pain mixed with determination. Mrs. Okafor? She asked hesitantly. I'm Blessing Ease. I sent you that text. I know you probably don't want to see me right now, but please. I've been looking for Chukwudi for 4 years. I need to know what he did to you, and you need to know what he did to me. I looked at Mrs. Adebayo, who nodded slightly. Against my better judgment, I said, Get in the car. We'll talk. The drive to my office in Victoria Island was tense and silent. Blessing sat in the back, staring out the window at Lagos's chaotic traffic. I studied her in the rearview mirror. She was beautiful in an understated way, with tribal marks on her cheeks that suggested Igbo heritage. She looked tired, worn down by years of whatever Chukwudi had put her through. My office building rose 32 stories, glass and steel reflecting the afternoon sun. We took the private elevator to my executive suite on the top floor. My assistant, Kemi, looked surprised to see me back so early, but I waved her off. Hold all my calls, I said. And bring water, please. Once we were settled in my private conference room, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos Harbor, Blessing finally spoke. Thank you for seeing me. I know this must be. She struggled for words. Difficult. Tell me your story, I said simply. From the beginning. Blessing took a shaky breath. I met Chukwudi in 2010, at the University of Port Harcourt. I was studying accounting. He was doing his master's in business. He was charming, ambitious, said he came from a wealthy family in Anambra State. We dated for a year, and he proposed. A big romantic gesture at the beach, everything I dreamed of. Her voice cracked slightly. We married in 2011. Small ceremony, just family. His family seemed off, somehow. His mother was cold to me. But I thought it was normal mother-in-law behavior. I thought she'd warm up eventually. What happened after the marriage? Mrs. Adebayo asked, taking notes. For the first year, everything seemed fine. We lived in a small flat in Port Harcourt. I was working as a junior accountant. Chukwudi said he was job hunting, waiting for the right opportunity. I supported us both. Blessing's hands twisted her handbag. Then the lies started unraveling. I discovered he'd been fired from his last job, not resigned like he claimed, for stealing from the company. Small amounts, never charged because they didn't want the scandal. But he was blacklisted in Port Harcourt. My chest tightened. The pattern was familiar. He became different, Blessing continued. Angry. Controlling. He started spending my salary before I even brought it home. Said he was making investments, building our future. But there were never any investments. Just gambling, drinking, women. Did he ever hurt you? I asked quietly. Blessing nodded, tears forming. Not at first. But eventually, yes. When I questioned the money, when I asked where it was going, he said I didn't trust him, that I was a terrible wife. She wiped her eyes. Then one day, I came home from work, and he was gone. Everything valuable in the apartment. My jewelry, my laptop, even my grandmother's wedding ring, all gone. He left a note saying he was going to Lagos for a business opportunity. That was 2014. I never saw him again. You didn't try to find him? Mrs. Adebayo asked. Of course I did. I filed police reports. I went to Lagos multiple times, asking around. But Lagos is huge, and I had no money, no connections. Eventually, I had to accept he'd abandoned me. Blessing looked directly at me. I only found out he'd remarried when a friend saw your wedding photos in a magazine. She sent them to me. I was devastated. Not because I still loved him, I'd stopped loving him long before, but because it meant he'd never intended to be a real husband to me. I was just practice. The word hit hard. Practice. That's what I'd been too. A mark. A target. A woman with money for him to steal. Why didn't you come forward then? I asked. When you saw the wedding photos? Blessing's expression turned bitter. I thought about it. But what could I do? I was a nobody from Port Harcourt. You were Amara Okafor, daughter of a billionaire. Who would believe me over the powerful couple in all the society magazines? And honestly... She paused. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I'd been fooled, that I'd married a monster, that I'd been too weak to see it coming. I understood that shame. I'd felt it myself for months. There's something else, Blessing said, pulling a folder from her handbag. After I saw your wedding photos, I started keeping track. Following Chikwudi's life from a distance, through social media, through society columns. I kept all of it. I don't know why. Maybe I thought someday I'd need proof that my marriage was real, that I wasn't crazy. She spread photos and printed articles across the conference table. Images of Chikwudi and me at charity galas, business events, family gatherings. Articles about my business successes, always mentioning my supportive husband. Seeing our life together laid out like evidence of a crime made my stomach turn. But look at this one, Blessing said, pointing to a photo from 18 months ago. A society wedding in Abuja. Chikwudi and I were in the background, but Blessing had circled a woman in the crowd. Young, beautiful, wearing an expensive dress. That's Chidera Okoro, Blessing said. Barrister Okoro's daughter. I recognized her because I did some research on Okoro after I realized he was Chikwudi's university friend. In several photos from high society events over the past 2 years, Chidera and Chikwudi are close. Very close. She laid out more photos. Subtle things, a hand on a shoulder, standing too close, exchanged glances. Nothing overtly romantic, but patterns emerged. They'd been seeing each other while Chikwudi was still married to me, while he was sleeping with my sister, while he was planning to steal my fortune. He was playing all of us, I said quietly. Me, Ngozi, Chidera, probably others. Men like Chikwudi don't change, Blessing said. They just find new victims. Better victims. I was poor, so he bled me dry and moved on. You were rich, so he planned something bigger. Mrs. Adebayo was studying the photos intently. Mrs. Okafor, with Blessing's testimony and this evidence, we can pursue multiple criminal charges. Bigamy, fraud, theft, the prosecution will be strong. I'll testify, Blessing said immediately. I'll tell everything. He destroyed 4 years of my life, and from what I understand, 7 of yours. He needs to pay. A knock at the door interrupted us. Kemi poked her head in. Ma, I'm sorry, but you have a visitor who says it's urgent. Your mother is here. My heart sank. My mother, Chief Mrs. Chinyu Okafor, was a force of nature, elegant, traditional, and fiercely protective of family honor. She'd been devastated by the divorce, more concerned about what people would say than about my emotional well-being. Send her in, I said, bracing myself. My mother swept into the room in full traditional attire, expensive Ankara fabric, gold jewelry, her signature head wrap perfectly arranged. At 65, she still commanded attention. But when she saw Blessing, she stopped short. Amara, who is this? Mama, this is Blessing Ease. She's Chikwuti's first wife. My mother's hand flew to her chest. His what? Sit down, Mama. This is going to take some explaining. Don't miss what happens next. Like and subscribe if you're loving this story. What do you think Amara's mother will do? Comment below. My mother sat down slowly, her expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally, cold fury. As Mrs. Adebayo and I explained everything, the bigamy, the fraud, Barrister Okoro's arrest, the attempted theft, her face became a mask of controlled rage. When we finished, she turned to Blessing. Tell me everything about your marriage to my daughters, to that man. Blessing repeated her story, more details emerging this time. How Chikwuti had sweet-talked her family, impressed her father with fake business credentials, promised a prosperous future. How quickly the mask had slipped after the wedding. And your family? My mother asked. They allowed him to just disappear? My parents died when I was young, Ma, Blessing said quietly. I have an uncle in Owerri, but we're not close. When Chikwuti left, I had no one to turn to. I was alone. Something in my mother's expression shifted. The anger remained, but it was joined by something else, understanding, perhaps, or recognition of shared pain. Amara, my mother said, turning to me, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before you married that man, but I thought I was protecting you. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? My mother's perfectly composed exterior cracked slightly. Your father, Chief Okafor, he had reservations about Chikwuti. Serious reservations. A week before your wedding, he hired an investigator to look into his background. What? The word came out sharper than I intended. Why didn't he tell me? The investigator found irregularities, gaps in Chikwuti's employment history, debts he hadn't disclosed, questions about his family's wealth. They weren't as prominent as he claimed. Your father was going to confront him, was going to call off the wedding if necessary. My mother's voice broke. But then he had the heart attack. 3 days before the wedding, he collapsed at the office. By the time we got him to the hospital, he was already gone. Tears streamed down my face. My father had known. He'd tried to protect me, and fate had stolen that protection away. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. After he died, why didn't you show me the report? Because you were grieving, my mother said, her own eyes wet. You'd just lost your father. The wedding was in 3 days. 800 guests, everything paid for, and you were already drowning in sorrow. I thought maybe the investigator was wrong. Maybe Chikwuti really did love you. And I thought you needed something stable, something to hold on to while you mourned. So you let me marry a con artist. I made a mistake, my mother said quietly. A terrible mistake born from a mother's desire to protect her child from more pain. But I only added to it. I'm sorry, Amara. I'm so sorry. The office fell silent except for the muted sounds of Lagos traffic far below. Somewhere in this city, Chikwuti was probably trying to figure out his next move. Barrister Okoro was in custody. My sister was living with guilt. And I was sitting with my mother and the first wife I never knew existed, piecing together the wreckage of a marriage that had never been real. Do you still have it? I asked. The investigator's report? My mother nodded. It's in your father's safe at the house. I never threw it away. I couldn't bring myself to destroy your father's last attempt to protect you. I need to see it. All of it. I'll have it brought here tonight. My mother reached across the table and took my hand, a rare gesture of physical affection. Amara, whatever you need to do to make this right, to get justice, I will support you. Money, lawyers, connections, anything. Your father would have wanted that. I should have wanted that from the beginning. Mrs. Adebayo cleared her throat gently. If I may, Mrs. Okafor, the senior Mrs. Okafor, there's another matter we should discuss. The publicity. What about it? My mother asked sharply. This case is already attracting media attention. A lawyer arrested in court, attempted wire fraud, a prominent society marriage revealed as bigamous. The tabloids will feast on this. We need to control the narrative before it controls us. My mother's expression hardened with determination. I have contacts at every major newspaper and television station in Lagos. I'll make calls. We tell our version first, and we tell it completely. Amara is the victim here. That message must be clear. There's another consideration, I said slowly, an idea forming. What if we don't just control the narrative? What if we use it? Everyone looked at me questioningly. Think about it, I continued. How many women in Nigeria, in Africa, have been deceived by men like Chukwudi? Men who use marriage as a business transaction, who prey on successful women, who commit fraud and bigamy without consequences. This isn't just my story. It's a warning. You want to go public, Mrs. Adebayo said. Not a question. I want to go very public. I want every detail out there. I want other women to see what happened and recognize the patterns in their own lives. I want young women to know the red flags before they marry a man like Chukwudi. The scrutiny will be intense, my mother warned. People will judge, will gossip, will say terrible things. You know how society can be. They'll find ways to blame you, to suggest you must have known, must have done something to deserve this. Let them talk, I said firmly. I'm done being ashamed of being deceived. I'm done hiding betrayal like it's my fault. Chukwudi should be the one hiding. He should be the one ashamed. Blessing spoke up quietly. If you're going public, I want to tell my story too. I want other women who've been abandoned to know they're not alone. An idea crystallized. What if we did more than just talk? What if we created something permanent? Like what? Mrs. Adebayo asked. A foundation. A legal aid organization specifically for women dealing with domestic fraud, bigamy, financial abuse in marriages. We provide lawyers, investigators, support, everything women like us and Blessing needed but couldn't access. The words came faster as excitement built. We use my father's name. The Chief Okafor Foundation for Matrimonial Justice. We turn this nightmare into something that actually helps people. My mother's eyes lit up with the same determination I'd inherited from her. Your father would have loved that. He always said wealth meant nothing if you didn't use it to protect the vulnerable. We'll need significant capital, Mrs. Adebayo said, but she was already making notes, clearly on board. Legal staff, office space, outreach programs. I'll fund it, I said immediately. Consider it my first act with my legally reclaimed fortune. Chukwudi tried to steal $600 million from me. Instead, I'm going to use it to make sure women like Blessing never feel powerless again. Kemi knocked and entered with a concerned expression. Ma, there are reporters gathering downstairs in the lobby. Someone must have leaked details from the court case. They're asking for a statement. Perfect timing, actually. Tell them I'll give a press conference, I said. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., right here in the conference room. Mrs. Adebayo, prepare a statement. Mama, contact your media friends. I want coverage. Blessing, if you're willing, I'd like you to stand with me when I speak. Blessing nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. For believing me. For For treating me like I matter. You do matter, I said firmly. We both matter. And tomorrow, Lagos is going to know exactly what kind of man Chukwudi Nwosu really is. As everyone began preparing for the next day's press conference, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, Amara. It was Chukwudi's voice, but different, smaller, desperate. Please, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. If you'll just listen. You violated the restraining order by calling me, I said coldly. This call is being recorded on my lawyer's advice. You have 5 seconds to hang up before I report you. Wait, please. I can explain everything. Blessing, she's lying. She's trying to ruin me out of spite. 3 seconds. The money wasn't for me, it was for our children's future. 1 second. I hung up and immediately forwarded the call details to Mrs. Adebayo. Within minutes, she'd reported the violation to court security. Chukwudi had just made his situation exponentially worse. That was stupid of him, Mrs. Adebayo observed. Desperate and stupid. Good, I said. Let him be desperate. Let him feel what we felt. My mother stood, adjusting her head wrap. I'm going home to get your father's report. I'll be back within 2 hours. In the meantime, Amara, you should eat something. You look exhausted. She was right. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, running on adrenaline and righteous anger. Kemi ordered food from a nearby restaurant, jollof rice, grilled chicken, plantains. Simple comfort food that reminded me of childhood, when problems could be solved with a good meal and my father's reassuring presence. As I ate, Blessing sat quietly, looking overwhelmed by the day's events. Are you okay? I asked her. I don't know, she admitted. This morning, I was a forgotten wife in Port Harcourt with no hope of justice. Tonight, I'm having dinner in a billionaire's office, planning to tell my story to the entire country. It doesn't feel real. I know the feeling, I said. None of this feels real. But we're going to make it count. My mother returned at 8 p.m. with a thick folder, my father's investigative report on Chukwudi. We spread it across the conference table, reading in silence. The report was damning. The investigator had found Chukwudi's real family background, lower middle class in Onitsha, not wealthy as claimed. His employment history, fired from 3 jobs for theft or fraud. Significant gambling debts totaling over 8 million naira. A previous relationship where he'd stolen from his girlfriend's family business. And buried deep in the appendix, a marriage certificate from Port Harcourt. My father had known everything. He'd seen through Chukwudi completely. There's a note, my mother said, her voice breaking. At the end. In your father's handwriting. I turned to the last page. My father's familiar script filled half a page. My dearest Amara, if you are reading this, it means I did not have the courage to show it to you myself, or fate intervened before I could. This man you plan to marry is not who he claims to be. I know you love him, and that makes this harder. But true love should not require you to be deceived. True partnership should not begin with lies. Call off this wedding. Mourn if you must. Rage at me if you need to. But protect yourself, my daughter. Protect your future. You are stronger than you know, smarter than any con artist, and worthy of a love built on truth. Whatever happens, know that I love you beyond measure. Your father. I couldn't breathe. The paper blurred as tears fell, dropping onto my father's words. He'd tried to save me. Even from beyond the grave, he'd tried. We use this, I said through tears. Tomorrow, at the press conference. We show everyone that my father saw the truth. That he tried to protect me. That if Chukwudi thinks he can steal from Chief Okafor's daughter, he's forgotten who my father was. My mother gripped my hand tightly. Your father is watching, Amara. And he's proud of the woman you've become. As we prepared to leave for the night, Mrs. Adebayo's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression shifted from neutral to alert. That was Detective Ibrahim from the EFCC, she said, hanging up. They've expanded their investigation into Barrister Okoro. They found evidence of other fraudulent cases, other clients he may have stolen from. And she paused significantly. They found communications between Okoro and someone named Chitara about moving money offshore. If she was involved in the conspiracy, she could face charges too. Chikwudi's girlfriend, I said. The one he was supposedly running away with. She may have more to lose than we thought, Mrs. Adebayo said. If she cooperates with investigators, she might implicate Chikwudi in ways even we couldn't. Lovers turn on each other very quickly when prison becomes a real possibility. As I finally headed home that night, driving through Lagos's neon-lit streets, I thought about how much had changed in a single day. This morning, I'd walked into court expecting a battle. Tonight, I was planning a war, not just against Chikwudi, but against every system that allowed men like him to prey on women. When I arrived home, my children were already asleep. I stood in their doorway, watching Chisholm and Dubum breathe softly, innocent and unaware of how their world had shifted. What would I tell them someday about their father? How do you explain to children that the man they love is also the man who tried to destroy everything? But that was a problem for future Amara. Tonight, I just watched them sleep and promised silently that I would build them a world where the truth mattered, where justice was possible, where women like their mother and Blessing didn't have to fight alone. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. I know things about you, about your business, about your father. Drop the charges or everyone will know your secrets too. See. Chikwudi, threatening me now. I forwarded the message to Mrs. Adebayo and Detective Ibrahim, then blocked the number. Let him threaten. Let him scheme. Tomorrow, the whole world would know his secrets. And unlike his threats, mine were backed by truth. Share this story if you believe in women supporting women. What do you think Chikwudi's next move will be? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The press conference room was packed by 9:45 a.m. Reporters from every major Nigerian news outlet, bloggers, social media influencers, even a crew from CNN Africa. Word had spread fast. Billionaire heiress exposing bigamous husband in dramatic courtroom showdown was exactly the kind of story that commanded attention. I stood in my private office, adjusting the deep purple Ankara dress I'd chosen deliberately. Purple for royalty, for power, for refusing to be a victim. Blessing stood beside me in a simple but elegant outfit my mother had brought for her. Mrs. Adebayo reviewed talking points one final time. Remember, she said, stick to facts. Show emotion, but stay in control. We want empathy, not pity. My mother entered, regal in traditional attire. The cameras are ready. Your statement has been distributed. Are you prepared? Was I? This would change everything. Once I spoke publicly, there was no taking it back. My children would grow up with this story available to anyone with internet access. My business reputation would be permanently tied to this scandal. Every future relationship would be shadowed by the question, was I truly deceived, or did I know and stay anyway? But staying silent meant Chikwudi's version could dominate. Meant other women might fall into his traps. Meant my father's attempt to protect me would remain hidden. I'm ready, I said. We entered the conference room together. Me, Blessing, Mrs. Adebayo, and my mother. Camera flashes erupted immediately. Questions shouted over each other. Mrs. Okafor, is it true your husband was already married? How long did you know about the bigamy? Will you press criminal charges? Is your fortune safe? I raised my hand, and gradually, the room quieted. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. My name is Amara Okafor, daughter of the late Chief Emmanuel Okafor and CEO of Okafor Properties Limited. I'm here today to tell you a story about betrayal, about systematic fraud, and about why I refuse to be silent about it. I took a breath and began. For 30 minutes, I laid it all out. Meeting Chikwudi. The whirlwind romance. My father's death and the investigation report he'd left behind, which I read aloud, my voice breaking only slightly. The marriage that seemed perfect from the outside. The infidelity with my own sister. The discovery of Chikwudi's prior marriage to Blessing. Then Blessing spoke, her voice gaining strength as she shared her story. The room was absolutely silent as she described being abandoned, impoverished, left to believe she was crazy or worthless. "I'm standing here today," Blessing concluded, "because Mrs. Okafor believed me when society taught her not to. Because she chose solidarity with another woman over protecting her ego. How many of us women have been turned against each other by men who benefit from our division?" The question hung in the air, powerful and pointed. Mrs. Adebayo then presented the legal facts. The forged documents, Barrister Okoro's attempted theft during court proceedings, the pattern of financial fraud stretching back years. She announced our intention to pursue full criminal prosecution. "Finally," I said, retaking the microphone, "I'm announcing the creation of the Chief Okafor Foundation for Matrimonial Justice. This foundation will provide free legal services, investigative support, and counseling to Nigerian women experiencing domestic fraud, bigamy, financial abuse, or abandonment in marriages. My father tried to protect me. I failed to listen. But in his name, I will help protect others." I paused, looking directly into the cameras. To any woman watching this who sees herself in my story or Blessings, you are not alone. You are not stupid for being deceived. You are not weak for wanting to believe in love. And you do not have to face this alone. The foundation will launch next month with a 24-hour hotline, legal consultations, and emergency financial assistance. Domestic betrayal thrives in silence. Today, we break that silence. The room erupted with questions again, but I'd said what I needed to say. As Mrs. Adebayo handled the detailed questions, my phone buzzed with messages flooding in. From business associates offering support. From other women sharing their own stories of betrayal. From organizations asking how they could help the foundation. From my children's school, asking if extra security was needed. That last one made my stomach clench. Of course there would be fallout for Chisholm and Dubham. Other children could be cruel when they learned about scandal. One message stood out, though. From Ngozi, I watched the press conference. "You were brave. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to help the foundation if you'll let me. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can help other women avoid becoming who I became." I stared at the message for a long moment. Ngozi had betrayed me as deeply as Chukwudi had. Could I work with her? Should I? But before I could respond, Kemi rushed into the room, her face pale. "Ma, you need to see this. It's on every news site." She held up her tablet. A new headline blazed across the screen. Breaking. Chukwudi Nwosu arrested at Lagos airport attempting to flee country with forged documents and 15 million Nigerian nairas in cash. The article detailed how immigration officials had flagged Chukwudi at Murtala Muhammad International Airport, trying to board a flight to South Africa using a fake passport. The cash, suspected to be stolen from various sources, was seized. He was now in EFCC custody. He'd tried to run. Of course he had. "There's more," Kemi said, swiping to another article. "Chidera Okoro has been arrested too. They found evidence she helped her father and Chukwudi move money offshore. She's been charged as an accessory to fraud." The house of cards was collapsing entirely. Mrs. Adebayo pulled me aside. "Detective Ibrahim wants to meet with you this afternoon. With both Okoro and Chukwudi in custody, they're building a major case. They'll need your full testimony, all your evidence, everything." "Whatever they need," I said. "I want this airtight." The press conference finally ended around noon. Blessing and I found a quiet moment in my office afterward. "What will you do now?" I asked her. "Go back to Port Harcourt, I suppose," she said. "Back to my accounting job, my small flat, my ordinary life. But it feels different now. Lighter, somehow. Like I've been carrying something heavy for years and finally put it down." "What if you didn't go back?" I said impulsively. "What if you stayed in Lagos? The foundation will need someone to manage finances, someone who understands what victims of financial fraud need because she's lived it. Someone I can trust completely." Blessing's eyes widened. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a purpose," I corrected. A chance to turn your pain into power for other women. Obviously, we'd compensate you well. You'd need to relocate, get proper housing. But more than that, you'd be helping build something important. Blessing looked overwhelmed. Yes, I want that. Thank you, Amara. Thank you, I countered, for having the courage to come forward. You didn't have to. You could have stayed anonymous, protected yourself. But you chose truth instead. As Blessing left to make arrangements for her move to Lagos, my mother approached. Your father would be so proud, she said quietly. The press conference, the foundation, the way you held yourself. He would have been bursting with pride. I wish he was here, I admitted. I wish he could have protected me from Chukwudi like he wanted to. But in a way he did, my mother said. He left you that report. He left you the truth. And he left you the strength and resources to fight back. That's the greatest protection a father can give, not shielding his daughter from all harm, but ensuring she has everything she needs to triumph over it. A truth I was still learning to accept. That afternoon, I met with Detective Ibrahim at EFCC headquarters. The building was intimidating, all concrete and security, the kind of place that reminded you the government could be powerful when properly motivated. Detective Ibrahim was a no-nonsense man in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Okafor, he greeted me, shaking my hand firmly. Thank you for coming. Your press conference was enlightening. I wanted the truth out there, I said simply. The truth is proving quite valuable to our investigation, he said, leading me to an interview room. Based on evidence we've gathered from Barrister Okoro's offices and devices, we've uncovered a fraud network that's been operating for at least 5 years. Your case is just one of many. He laid out files. Other women, other victims. Some were wives like me. Others were business partners or clients who'd trusted Okoro professionally. We estimate they've stolen over 800 million Nigerian nairas collectively, Ibrahim said. Your husband and Okoro weren't just targeting you. You were the biggest score, but hardly the only one. Rage and sadness warred in my chest. How many lives had they destroyed? What do you need from me? I asked. Everything. Full timeline, all documentation, testimony. We're building a RICO-style case, treating this as organized criminal enterprise. If we do this right, both Nwosu and Okoro will spend decades in prison. For the next 4 hours, I gave my statement. Every detail, every document, every lie I discovered. Detective Ibrahim recorded it all meticulously. As we finished, he said something unexpected. Mrs. Okafor, in my 20 years doing this work, I've seen hundreds of fraud victims. Most are too ashamed to come forward publicly. You're different. That foundation you're starting, it could change how we handle these cases nationwide. That's the goal, I said. Making sure women have support systems so they don't have to choose between justice and public humiliation. I left EFCC headquarters as the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My phone rang. Mrs. Adebayo. Turn on the TV, she said urgently. Any news channel. Now. I pulled up a news stream on my phone. And there he was, Chukwudi, being led out of EFCC headquarters in handcuffs, flanked by officers. The cameras captured every moment, his designer shirt wrinkled, his face gaunt, his eyes darting frantically. A reporter thrust a microphone toward him. Mr. Nwosu, what do you have to say about your wife's allegations? Ex-wife, he corrected bitterly. And she's lying. All of this is a setup because she couldn't handle being rejected for her sister. You were caught at the airport with forged documents and stolen money, the reporter interrupted. How is that a setup? Chukwudi's face contorted with rage. Amara Okafor thinks her money makes her untouchable. But I know things. I know secrets about her father's business, about where that fortune really came from. If she pushes this, I'll... An EFCC officer cut him off, pulling him toward the waiting van. But the damage was done. Chukwudi had just threatened to expose supposed secrets about my father's business on national television. My phone exploded with calls. My mother, Mrs. Adebayo, business partners, board members, everyone asking the same thing. What secrets? What was Chukwudi talking about? I knew the answer. Nothing. It was a desperate bluff, a last attempt to regain power by creating doubt. My father's business dealings had been meticulous, legal, and well documented. I'd personally reviewed everything after his death. But the seed of doubt was planted now, and in Nigeria's rumor-filled business world, doubt could be as damaging as truth. I called an emergency meeting at my office for 8 p.m. My mother, Mrs. Adebayo, my CFO Adeyemi, and my head of PR Funmi, all gathered around the conference table. We need to address this immediately, Funmi said, pacing. Social media is already running wild with speculation. #OkaforSecrets is trending. People are questioning whether your father's wealth was legitimate. My father built his business over 40 years, I said firmly. Every naira is accounted for. Every property acquisition is documented. Chukwudi is lying because he has nothing else left. Then we prove it, Adeyemi said. He was a quiet man normally, but strategic when needed. We open the books completely. Full financial audit by an independent international firm. We publish the results. We show that Chief Okafor's empire was built on legitimate business, not corruption. My mother looked pained. Opening the books means exposing family finances to public scrutiny. Everything your father worked for, every private transaction. We'll prove his integrity, I finished. Mama, Daddy always said sunlight was the best disinfectant. If we have nothing to hide, we show everything. Chukwudi wants to make this about my father's character. Let's make it about the truth instead. Mrs. Adebayo nodded approvingly. It's bold. It's also smart. Most corrupt businesses would never dare undergo independent audit. By volunteering for one, you're essentially calling Chukwudi's bluff publicly. Do it, I decided. Adeyemi, engage PricewaterhouseCoopers or Deloitte, whichever can start immediately. Full forensic audit going back to 1985 when my father founded the company. Funmi, prepare a statement for morning. In response to baseless allegations, Okafor Properties invites full independent audit to demonstrate the integrity of Chief Okafor's legacy. We welcome transparency and truth. As the meeting broke up, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mrs. Okafor? A young woman's voice, shaking with emotion. My name is Chidera Okoro. Please don't hang up. The girlfriend. The daughter. The woman who'd helped Chukwudi plan his escape. You have 60 seconds, I said coldly. I know I don't deserve your time. I know what I did was unforgivable. But you need to know, my father and Chukwudi, they're planning something. From inside custody. My father has contacts, powerful people who owe him favors. He's making calls, arranging. Why are you telling me this? I interrupted. You helped them steal from me. Because I was stupid and in love and blind, Chidera said, her voice breaking. Chukwudi promised we'd be together, that he loved me, that you were just a business arrangement to him. I believed him. I helped move money because I thought it was his money, his right. But then I heard him talking to my father about their other arrangements, about other women, about how I was just another mark. She sobbed. I was just another fool, Mrs. Okafor. Just like you. Just like Blessing. Just another woman he used. Despite myself, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Chukwudi's web had caught many flies. What are they planning? I asked. I don't know exactly. But my father made a call today to someone he called the commissioner. He said they needed to apply pressure to make you drop the charges. He said they'd use the media, use political connections, use whatever they needed to protect themselves. The commissioner. That could mean police, could mean government official, could mean any number of powerful men in Lagos's interconnected elite. Are you willing to testify to this? I asked. On record. I already am, Chidera said. I'm cooperating fully with the EFCC. I gave them everything: account numbers, email passwords, recorded conversations. I know it doesn't fix what I did, but maybe it helps stop them from doing it to anyone else. Why should I believe you're really cooperating and not just gathering information for them? Because I'm calling from EFCC headquarters right now, Chitara said. Detective Ibrahim is standing right here. He can confirm. I'm in protective custody. My father threatened me when he found out I was talking. Said I was dead to him. Chikwudi won't even look at me. I have nothing left except the truth. She was crying openly now. Despite everything, I understood that pain. The moment you realize the man you loved never existed. Detective Ibrahim, I said. Is this legitimate? I heard the phone change hands. Mrs. Okafor, it's Ibrahim. Yes, Ms. Okoro has been cooperating since this afternoon. The information she's providing is valuable. I can't discuss details, but I wanted you to know about the Commissioner conversation. We're investigating it, but you should be aware there may be attempts to pressure you through official or unofficial channels. Let them try, I said. I'm not backing down. I didn't think you would, Ibrahim said with what sounded like approval. Stay vigilant, Mrs. Okafor. Men like Okoro don't go down without fighting dirty. After hanging up, I sat in my office alone, looking out at Lagos's glittering nightscape. Somewhere in that sprawl of lights and shadows, people were plotting against me. But somewhere too were women who'd watched my press conference and felt less alone. Women who'd see the foundation launch and find hope. My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number, but with a photo attached. I opened it cautiously. The photo showed a young woman, maybe 25, standing in what looked like a modest apartment. She held a handwritten sign, "Thank you, Mrs. Okafor. You gave me courage to leave." From a woman in Ibadan. Then another text came. And another. Photos from all over Nigeria. Women holding signs, sharing their own stories of betrayal, thanking me for speaking up. They kept coming. Dozens, then hundreds. Screenshots of the foundation hotline number saved to phones. Messages saying, "I'm ready to tell my story now." Women offering to volunteer, to donate, to help other women escape situations like mine. This was why I'd gone public. Not revenge, though that was satisfying, but this. This wave of solidarity, of women realizing they weren't alone, weren't crazy, weren't weak. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Kemi entered, looking exhausted but determined. "Ma, I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but there's someone downstairs who insists on seeing you. She says her name is Chief Mrs. Nwosu, Chikwudi's mother." My mother-in-law. A woman who'd never liked me, who'd always seemed to know her son better than I did, who'd smiled at our wedding while presumably knowing about Blessing in Port Harcourt. Should I send her away? Kemi asked. Every instinct said yes. But curiosity won. What could she possibly want? "Send her up," I said. "But stay close." 5 minutes later, Chief Mrs. Nwosu entered my office. She was in her late 60s, traditionally dressed, moving with the careful dignity of someone who'd built walls around her pride. We'd never had a warm relationship. She'd always seemed to resent me, though I'd never understood why. Now, maybe I would find out. "Mrs. Okafor," she said formally. Not daughter, not Amara. Just the formal address. "Chief Mrs. Nwosu," I replied, equally formal. "Please, sit." She sat stiffly, her wrapper rustling. For a long moment, she said nothing, just studied me with eyes that held something I couldn't quite identify. "I came to apologize," she finally said. Of all the things I'd expected, that wasn't one of them. Apologize for what? For raising a son who would do this to you. For knowing what he was and saying nothing. For... Her voice cracked slightly. For hoping that maybe marriage to a good woman would change him. "You knew," I said, not a question. "About Blessing. About everything." "I knew my son was troubled," she said carefully. "I knew about the gambling, the debts, the way he used people. When he told me he'd met you, daughter of Chief Okafor, beautiful, successful, kind, I thought perhaps this was his chance to become better. That your goodness would inspire him to be good. So you said nothing when we married.
I said nothing, she confirmed, shame thick in her voice.
I told myself it wasn't really lying if no one asked directly. I convinced myself that the marriage to Blessing didn't count because it had failed so quickly, because she had disappeared and probably died or something. I didn't want to know.
She didn't die, I said coldly.
She survived. Despite your son abandoning her. Despite him stealing everything she had.
I know that now, Chief Mrs. Nwosu said.
I watched your press conference. I saw her standing there, alive, telling her story. And I realized. She paused, struggling. I realized I did to her exactly what I feared other mothers would do to my daughters. I protected my son at the expense of another woman's daughter. You have daughters? I asked.
3.
All married now, all living abroad. I was so worried about them finding good husbands, about protecting them from bad men. But I raised a bad man and protected him instead of his victims. Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks. What kind of mother does that make me? I didn't answer. I didn't know. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I'm asking that when you tell your story, when you talk about how this happened, you tell the truth about mothers too. About how we sometimes protect our sons from consequences, how we make excuses, how we enable them to hurt other women because we can't bear to see them as the villains they are. She stood slowly, pulling an envelope from her handbag. This is everything I know about my son's other victims. Women before Blessing, women I suspected but ignored. Names, dates, what I overheard. It's not much, but maybe it helps your investigation. Maybe it helps other women get justice too. She placed the envelope on my desk. I have failed as a mother, Chief Mrs. Nwosu said. I cannot undo that. But perhaps I can stop failing as a woman. She left without waiting for a response, her wrapper trailing behind her like regret-made fabric. I opened the envelope. Inside were handwritten notes spanning years. Names, incidents, patterns. Chukwudi's mother had been documenting his behavior, perhaps hoping to understand it, perhaps just bearing witness to what she couldn't stop. The last page was a letter addressed to me. Dear Amara, I wanted you to be the one who saved him. I wanted you to be strong enough, good enough, wealthy enough to make him into a man worth being. I put that burden on you without your knowledge or consent. I am sorry. You deserved better than my son. You deserved better than my silence. I hope you can use these notes to protect other women from what I failed to protect you from. A foolish old woman who loved her son more than justice. I sat there holding that letter for a long time, thinking about mothers and sons, about loyalty and complicity, about how love can blind us to truth even when truth is staring us in the face. My phone rang. Mrs. Adebayo. I just got a call from the court, she said. Emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. They're not saying what it's about, but I'm guessing Chukwudi's team, whoever he's gotten now, is making some kind of move. Possibly trying to get bail, possibly trying to suppress evidence. Let them try, I said, exhaustion and determination mixing in equal measure. I'll be there. Get some sleep, Mrs. Adebayo advised. Tomorrow could be difficult. But sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay in bed, my mind racing through everything. The press conference, the arrests, Chitara's warning, Chief Mrs. Nwosu's confession. Somewhere in Lagos, Chukwudi was sitting in a cell, probably still believing he could manipulate his way out of this. Somewhere, Barrister Okoro was making calls to powerful friends, pulling strings. Somewhere, women were reading about my story and making decisions about their own lives. And here I was, awake at 2 a.m., wondering if I was strong enough to see this through to the end. My daughter Chisholm appeared in my doorway, clutching her teddy bear. Mama? Why aren't you sleeping? Just thinking, baby. What are you doing up? Bad dreams, she said, climbing into my bed. I dreamed Daddy was angry at you. My heart broke a little. Of course she was having bad dreams. Her world had been upended. "Your daddy and I are having grown-up problems," I said carefully. "But you and Dubam are safe. You're loved. Nothing will change that. Jasmine at school said her daddy saw you on TV. She said you're famous now." Something like that. Chisholm looked up at me with her father's eyes, a reminder that he'd given me these children even if he'd given me nothing else genuine. "Are you going to be okay, Mama?" "Yes, baby," I said, hugging her close. "Mama is going to be just fine. Better than fine." As Chisholm drifted back to sleep in my arms, I made a silent promise. I would finish this. Not just for me, not even just for Blessing or the other victims, but for Chisholm and every daughter who deserved to grow up in a world where women didn't have to fight alone for justice. Tomorrow's court hearing would be another battle. But I was Chief Okafor's daughter. I had survived betrayal, exposure, public scrutiny, and I was still standing. Let them come with their lawyers, their political connections, their threats. I was ready. Drop a comment if you think justice will be served. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Next chapter is the finale and you won't believe what happens. The courtroom was even more packed than last time. News of the emergency hearing had spread fast, and everyone wanted to see the next act of Lagos's biggest scandal. I arrived with Mrs. Adebayo, my mother, and, surprisingly, Blessing, who'd insisted on being there for support. Chukwudi sat at the defendant's table in prison-issued clothing, looking gaunt and diminished. His new lawyer was a woman named Barrister Nena Okafor, no relation, known for taking difficult cases. She had a reputation for being brilliant and ruthless. Judge Okonkwo entered, and we all rose. "This emergency hearing was requested by the defense," he began. "Barrister Okafor, proceed." Barrister Nena stood, her movements precise. "Your Honor, my client has been unjustly imprisoned based on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of an admitted co-conspirator, Ms. Chidera Okoro, who is clearly trying to save herself by implicating others. We're requesting immediate bail pending trial, citing my client's presumption of innocence and his rights under Nigerian law." Mrs. Adebayo rose immediately. "Your Honor, Mr. Nwosu was literally caught at the airport attempting to flee the country with forged documents and stolen cash. He's a demonstrated flight risk." "Alleged stolen cash," Barrister Nena interrupted. "My client maintains that money was legitimately his." "From what source?" Mrs. Adebayo shot back. "He hasn't held employment in 6 years. Every naira he possessed came from my client or from fraud." "Your Honor," Barrister Nena continued smoothly, "there's another matter this court should consider. My client has information about potential criminal activities at Okafor Properties Limited, activities dating back to the late Chief Okafor's tenure. He's willing to cooperate with authorities in exchange for reasonable bail terms." The courtroom exploded in whispers. My mother grabbed my arm. This was it, Chukwudi's attempted power play, threatening to expose supposed corruption. Judge Okonkwo's gavel cracked. "Order." "Barrister Okafor, are you suggesting your client has evidence of criminal wrongdoing by Mrs. Okafor or her late father?" "I'm suggesting my client has information that might be of interest to investigative authorities. Information he'd be more willing to share if he weren't being held in conditions that threaten his health and safety." "Blackmail," Mrs. Adebayo said flatly. "This is courtroom blackmail, Your Honor. Mr. Nwosu is fabricating allegations to force Mrs. Okafor to drop charges." "They're not fabrications," Chukwudi said suddenly, standing. His new lawyer tried to quiet him, but he pushed on. Chief Okafor didn't build his empire through legitimate means. He had political connections, he got contracts through bribes, "Mr. Nwosu, sit down," Judge Okonkwo ordered. But Chukwudi was desperate now, words tumbling out. "I have documents, recordings, proof that Okafor Properties has been laundering money for politicians for 30 years. If Amara pushes this case, all of it comes out. Her father's legacy will be destroyed, her business will collapse, her children will inherit shame instead of wealth." "Enough." Judge Okonkwo's voice thundered through the courtroom. "Mr. Nwosu, you will be silent, or I will hold you in contempt." My heart was pounding, but not from fear. from rage. How dare he? How dare he try to destroy my father's memory with lies? Your Honor, I said, standing. May I address the court? Mrs. Adebayo looked surprised but didn't stop me. Judge Okonkwo considered, then nodded. Briefly, Mrs. Okafor. I walked to the center of the courtroom, very aware of every eye on me. Your Honor, my ex-husband, my fake husband, since our marriage was fraudulent, is doing exactly what abusers do when they're cornered. He's lying. He's manipulating. He's trying to make me choose between justice and my father's reputation. I turned to look directly at Chikwudi. But here's what he doesn't know. I'm not afraid of investigations. In fact, I welcome them. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document, handing it to the bailiff to give to Judge Okonkwo. Your Honor, this is a contract I signed yesterday with Deloitte, Nigeria. They're conducting a complete forensic audit of Okafor properties going back 40 years. Every transaction, every contract, every political connection, every naira. When it's complete, and it will be complete, we'll publish the results publicly. Chikwudi's face went pale. Furthermore, I continued, I've already contacted the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and invited them to participate in the audit. I've provided them with full access to all company records, all private documents, everything. If my father engaged in any illegal activities, I want to know. If my company has any corrupt practices, I'll expose them myself. Judge Okonkwo was reading the contract, his expression unreadable. Mr. Nwosu claims he has evidence of wrongdoing, I said. I'm calling his bluff. I'm asking this court to order him to turn over every document, every recording, every piece of evidence he claims to have. Not as a bargaining chip, but as evidence in both the criminal case against him and the audit I've commissioned. Let's examine everything together. Let's see whose integrity holds up under scrutiny, my father's or my ex-husband's. The courtroom was silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Your Honor, Mrs. Adebayo added, standing, Mrs. Okafor's transparency speaks for itself. Mr. Nwosu, meanwhile, has repeatedly demonstrated dishonesty, fraud, and manipulation. His sudden claims about evidence only emerged when he faced serious criminal charges. The timing is highly suspicious. Barrister Nena was conferring frantically with Chikwudi, who looked increasingly panicked. Judge Okonkwo set down the document. Mr. Nwosu, through your counsel, do you or do you not have concrete evidence of criminal wrongdoing by Chief Okafor or Okafor Properties? Barrister Nena stood slowly. Your Honor, my client has information that requires proper vetting before. That's a no, Judge Okonkwo said flatly. You're fishing. Mr. Nwosu made dramatic allegations he cannot substantiate, hoping to pressure Mrs. Okafor into dropping charges. That strategy has failed spectacularly. He turned to me. Mrs. Okafor, I commend your transparency, though it's unusual for a defendant, or in this case, a plaintiff in the original case, to voluntarily subject themselves to this level of scrutiny. My father taught me that truth was worth more than reputation, I said simply. If his business had flaws, I want to fix them. If it was clean, I want the world to know. Judge Okonkwo nodded. Mr. Nwosu, I'm denying your bail application. You remain in custody pending trial. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to surrender any and all documents or evidence related to your allegations about Okafor Properties within 72 hours. If you fail to produce credible evidence, I'll consider adding charges of attempting to obstruct justice. Chikwudi slumped in his chair, defeated. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm expediting this case. Trial begins in 3 weeks. Given the multiple charges, the attempted flight, and the pattern of deception, I see no reason for delay. We're adjourned. The gavel fell with finality. As the courtroom cleared, Chikwudi caught my eye. For a moment, our gazes locked. I saw the calculation there, the desperate search for some angle, some manipulation that might still work. But I also saw the moment he realized it was over. That he'd finally met a woman he couldn't con, couldn't control, couldn't defeat. Amara, he called out as guards prepared to take him away. Please, think about our children. They need their father. Our children need honesty, I said quietly. They need to learn that actions have consequences. They need to see that even when people we love betray us, we can survive. You gave them life, Chukwudi, and I'll always be grateful for that. But you don't get to use them as shields for your crimes. He opened his mouth to respond, but the guards led him away. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed immediately. But Mrs. Adebayo had prepared a statement. Justice is not about revenge. It's about truth. Mrs. Okafor has proven today that she fears nothing more than dishonesty, not investigation, not scrutiny, not even damage to her own interests. She has voluntarily opened every aspect of her business to independent audit because she believes in accountability. She hopes this case sets a precedent that domestic fraud, bigamy, and financial abuse will not be tolerated in Nigeria, regardless of the perpetrator's gender or the victim's wealth. The Chief Okafor Foundation for Matrimonial Justice launches officially next Monday. To women everywhere facing similar situations, you are not alone. The following weeks passed in a blur. The Deloitte audit began, teams of accountants descending on every office, every file, every record of Okafor properties. The EFCC worked alongside them, both groups finding exactly what I'd expected. Clean books. Legitimate contracts. Yes, my father had known politicians. You couldn't build an empire in Nigeria without political connections, but every deal had been above board, every transaction documented, every tax paid. Chukwudi never produced his evidence because it didn't exist. The court added obstruction charges to his growing list of crimes. The trial, when it finally happened, was almost anticlimactic. The evidence against Chukwudi and Barrister Okoro was overwhelming. Blessing testified about the abandonment and theft in Port Harcourt. I testified about the systematic fraud during our marriage. Chidera, granted immunity in exchange for cooperation, detailed the conspiracy to move assets offshore. Bank records, emails, recordings, all of it painted a damning picture. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Chukwudi was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Barrister Okoro received 25 years. Chidera, due to her cooperation, received probation and community service. I felt, not joy exactly, not even satisfaction, just tired relief that it was finally over. 3 months after the trial, the Chief Okafor Foundation for Matrimonial Justice officially opened its doors in a renovated building in Victoria Island. We'd hired 15 lawyers, 10 investigators, and a full support staff. Blessing ran the financial department with the precision of someone who understood exactly how money could be weaponized against vulnerable women. Ngozi, after months of therapy and genuine remorse, joined as a counselor specifically for women dealing with family betrayal. She worked for free, calling it her atonement. The hotline received over 3,000 calls in the first month. Stories of bigamy, financial abuse, emotional manipulation, abandonment, all the ways women were systematically defrauded under the guise of marriage and family. We helped 43 women in those first months. Legal representation, financial support, therapy, job placement. Some cases went to trial. Others settled. A few women simply needed help leaving dangerous situations. Each one reminded me why I'd fought so hard. 6 months later, I stood in my father's study, now converted into the Foundation's conference room, looking at the wall we'd dedicated to success stories. Photos of women who'd reclaimed their lives. Graduates, entrepreneurs, mothers who'd escaped abuse and rebuilt. "Mama would have loved this," a voice said behind me. I turned to find my mother, elegant as always, studying the wall with pride. "Your father too," she added. "He always said money was just a tool. What mattered was what you built with it." "I miss him," I admitted. "I wish he'd seen this. Wish he'd known his attempt to protect me, even though it came too late, inspired all of this." "He knows," my mother said firmly. "I have no doubt he knows." My phone buzzed. A text from Chisholm School. Parent-teacher conference tomorrow at 3 p.m. to discuss Chisholm's essay. She's won the school writing competition. I smiled. My children were thriving despite, or perhaps because of, everything that had happened. Chisholm had written an essay called My Mother is a Hero, about women who fight for justice. Dubum, too young to fully understand, just knew that Mama helped people and that made him proud. They saw their father once a month in supervised visits. Chukwudi had stopped the manipulations, stopped the lies. Prison had broken something in him, or maybe just revealed the emptiness that had always been there. The visits were quiet, awkward, but important for the children to maintain some connection, however flawed. Another message came through, this one from Blessing, Mrs. Okafor, we just closed our 100th case. Woman in Kano whose husband used her business license to take loans in her name. We got the charges dropped and sued him for fraud. She's free and her credit is restored. Hashtag 100 women. 100 women. 100 lives changed. I thought about where I'd been a year ago. Married to a man I thought I knew, blind to the betrayal happening in my own home, on the verge of losing everything my father had built. And I thought about where I was now. Single, wealthy on my own terms, running a foundation that was changing how Nigeria thought about domestic fraud, raising children who understood that strength meant standing up for truth even when it hurt. Mrs. Okafor? Kemi poked her head into the room. There's someone here to see you. She says she needs help. Her name is Adana, and her husband just emptied their joint account and disappeared with their 3 children. Another case. Another woman who needed help. Another opportunity to turn pain into power. Send her in, I said, straightening my shoulders. And Kemi, get Blessing and our family law team. Let's show Adana what justice looks like. As Kemi hurried off, I caught my reflection in the office window. I looked different than I had a year ago. Stronger, perhaps. Harder in some ways, but softer in others. The woman who'd walked into that courtroom holding a manila envelope had been fighting for her own survival. The woman I saw now fought for others too. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown international number. Mrs. Okafor, my name is Grace Mutua. I'm a lawyer in Nairobi, Kenya, and I read about your foundation. We have similar problems here: domestic fraud, bigamy, financial abuse of women in marriages. Would you consider helping us establish a sister organization? Your model could transform how East Africa handles these cases. I smiled, typing back immediately. Yes. Let's talk. When women help women, we change the world. And that, I thought, was exactly what my father would have wanted. Not revenge against one man, but revolution for countless women. The envelope I'd given the judge hadn't just exposed Chukwudi's crimes. It had opened a door to a different future, one where women didn't have to fight alone, where domestic betrayal carried real consequences, where truth mattered more than power. Chief Emmanuel Okafor had tried to save his daughter with an investigative report. His daughter had honored him by saving hundreds of others with the empire he'd left behind. Justice, it turned out, wasn't about making one man pay. It was about making sure no woman ever had to pay the price for trusting the wrong person again. I walked downstairs to meet Adana, ready to fight one more battle, win one more case, change one more life. Because that's what we did now. That's who we were. And we were just getting started. The end. Thank you for watching this story. If you loved it, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next dramatic tale. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below. What part of Amara's story inspired you most? And remember, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic fraud or abuse, you don't have to fight alone. Resources are available. Stay strong, stay safe, and remember, your truth is your power. See you in the next story.